Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Digital Nexus. We've got some exciting news on today. We deep dive into a lot of the statistics that are happening out there in relation to the use of AI in business, within use of AI for individuals, use of AI even in Australia itself. Mark, what else are we talking about?
We highlight things in the educational space and just some changes going on at OpenAI, as well as just some things that I've been up to in terms of building some new apps that I can show, and a big old competition for anyone that is interested in creative writing right at the end. So make sure you watch all the way to the end to get details on this massive prize pool. Yeah, that's it for me.
Sounds good. Look forward to seeing you there. Let's go.
We're taking flight. Shaping bright new light.
Mate, how's it going? Episode 29. What's going on this week? What have you?
Yeah, man. That's it's been a week actually. There's a lot going on.
Oh my gosh.
I have really exciting news on one of the startups. We've managed to partner with a developer that's help us scale things out. So it's super cool. We're gonna hopefully try and get that first MVP out very, very soon.
Ooh.
So I'm really pumped to start sharing that out with some business early stage customers. Going through the right process to validate and test rapidly. So that's super exciting. Some good.
I'm just reminded of the Simpsons, where he's a VIP, and it's like Homer's like, well, what does the V stand for? Very, and the I, important, and the P, and then what does the V stand for again? Anyway, so most important, valuable, whatever. But no, sorry, go on. What was your
MVP? The minimal valuable product. But yes, the minimal viable product, valuable product. Everyone, it changes. I did a presentation. We'll talk about this actually later. I presented to some MBA students yesterday on the product development path, and I sort of talked through processes, but most interestingly talked about the application of AI and the tools that you can utilize in the space. But I went deep into some of the definitions of the different terminologies around prototyping, from your proof of concept to your prototype to your MVP or your MVP, or most like minimal value driven product, MVDP, to your MMMP, which is your minimal marketable product. There's all these new terms that are getting thrown out there because people either don't align with MVP or they don't align with prototype, or large scale organizations, they tend to take less risks, so they jump straight into a product that's a bit more rounded and waste shit tons of money.
And we spoke about that last week. We spoke about a little bit about that last week, because there was that video about the indie dev problem. But it's not just indie developers for games, but just anyone developing stuff that just tinkers too much and doesn't actually get enough out there. So it's good that you did that video. And I thought you said NBA, and the basketball playoffs are on at the
moment. NBA? No.
NBA students. Wow. So they're getting into AI. I mean,
they've got so much money. They're just they're trying to look at new things to invest in. So why not?
Yeah. Exactly. Oh man, that's great. So, takeaways from that, what's your kind of consensus feel of where the future, the next generation, the next crop of inventors is like? Do you think that they're going to be in a good spot, or do you fear for the future?
Oh man, I definitely fear for our future, but I don't think it's to do with students. That's just to do with these are quite mature people. Obviously, they're MBA. So a lot of them already have a lot of world experience. The future is dark because of other reasons.
But we're
older. It's okay. I think it's good. They were very interested in the AI space and how it can apply to their thinking and their work and accelerate the things that they're doing. And the questions that came off the back of it were really good as well. So they were really eager to learn and understand the application for themselves. It always comes back to the why of it, right? So when you're making decisions on which tool to use and where I need to get to, it's a matter of understanding, all right, what are my goals and what is the fastest way I can get to that in the most, with the most quality type of solution. You don't want to just especially if you're building a business, you don't want to just jump into something, start building it and be like, oh yeah, and then find you just wasted, months or weeks playing with something that just isn't working for the right purpose. So start with your why always and roll out your decisions from there.
Mate, I love it. Start with why is definitely a great way to do it.
Ones.
Yeah, that's it.
So different purpose, but yes.
I wonder if it's Simon Sinek or my little cousin when I was like 11 years old and like I met my little American cousin, like we were back in the
Why?
Philippines and
Why?
he was just why, why,
Why?
why. And she starts with why, she ended with why. It's still a it's
So
all why.
my daughter's doing exactly the same thing right now. Just like it's like the seven whys. She always wants to get to the bottom of what the real issue is.
And we forget that. We lose that as adults. We just accept and just need to bring back that childish curiosity, right?
Yeah, we do. That is absolutely true. What about you, Mark? What's been happening in your beautiful world?
Oh, mate, a couple of things that have been interesting. I didn't have meetings in front of like MBA students, or not meetings, but presentations in front of MBA students. But I am prepping for a presentation to a whole bunch of not-for-profits. And as you and I know, Chris, we run a not-for-profit in the Australian DeFi Association, and being able to not just talk to these people from wearing the not centralized my venture studio hat and doing the AI kind of like spiel there, but also showing an example. Like this is not just we're talking about it and trying to sell people on it. No, we actually use this stuff in how we engage the community with the Australian DeFi Association. So getting to showcase that in a few weeks' time will be good. We were just prepping for it this week, myself and another group of presenters from a company called Intuit. And then also this week, there's a whole bunch of just things that I've been building. I'll show you something a little bit later. The success of ETF Tracker has begotten, is that the right word? It's come before, it's
Begotten.
begot. It's, I don't know. It's like, sounds like forgotten, but it's like, that's
It
not
does,
what I mean.
doesn't it?
I'm feeling like quite, what's the word for it, Chris? I'm feeling quite, uh, old school languagey just because, an old school tradition of the Pope. The new Pope is out, but like we'll jump to that. But just wanted to say that I'll showcase something that I've been building, in inspirated, if you will, from ETF Tracker, which now has over 800 users. Would you believe it? From that thing that started off, I don't know, it's not the
Wow,
tens of
that's
thousands.
fucking amazing. This is a perfect example of prototyping and like putting something out there and
Yeah.
testing and validating it. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I'm going to do something that I think has far more reach to do with superannuation. So watch this space.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yes, the dark horse of the Australian investment world.
Yep, that's it. So there's a whole heap of other things I'll cover and highlight, but I'm very happy to get into the news, and we'll go through some stuff as we go along. But yeah, this morning, Chris, it's we filmed this on the 9th of May, folks. So that is a very important day in the holy calendar, just because for those that are Catholic, they get a new pope. I believe we want to talk about that a little bit.
Is that happening today? That's the big decision maker this morning.
That has happened. So it literally, like, I had meetings here in the office at about 8 a.m. About 7:30 Sydney time this Friday. So I think it's yeah, it's just been announced, and it is a surprise. There were the front runners. There was a Filipino, which was
Yeah.
cool, Cardinal Tagle, and then there was like maybe two Italians, and one of them, he had a great name, Pier Battista Pizzaballa. I kid you not. Pierre Battista. Bless you. I know.
I know what
Pizzaballa.
you're doing.
Pizzaballa. So yeah, but he was not the one. It was an
No, went
American.
to Mr. Leo.
Yeah.
Pope Leo now the 14th, as Cardinal Robert Prevost becomes the first.
Yeah. So he
Yeah, how
changes.
exciting. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Crazy, crazy, right?
But I mean, on that note, what in the shamble ridiculousness was, the president of the United States
Yeah.
trying not to swear right now, thinking with what he had posted out there, and even some of the responses of people out there in the social space, Americans, just going, just saying things like, "Oh, I think they need to be open-minded around who the Pope could be, and I think this is a great opportunity for them to to have someone like this as their Pope." Like, what? Let's just pull this picture up. This is insane.
Sure. Let's go to you to do you want to grab the screen share?
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm good.
All right, folks. And enjoy, just while you got it on screen there, the chibi pet, Chris and Mark. I think that's we'll probably have to get an upgrade of that. It is pretty spot on with my outfit. It's pretty funny. I'm not wearing that today. Got a collared shirt on, but
So
yeah.
here, yeah. So Trump, it's like, I mean, he called it a joke, but I just want to show this image. It like this was his picture. So someone with AI generated a picture of Mr. Trump as dressed up as the Pope, and then proceeded to post it on X, saying how this this could be it. Like it could be the Pope. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Um, but
It's ridiculous because
it's
they
just
actually
like, and
chose
this
it.
is days after
Yeah,
he had just passed.
yeah.
Like just the mindset to go, you know what? I think this would be a funny thing to talk about after this really important global figure passes away and people are, a whole culture of people are in mourning. I just baffles the mind. But I mean, here's an interesting, terrible use of AI in practice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact that it's an American pope, and nothing against Cardinal Provost, now Pope Leo, but I do wonder if supposedly there's no lines in of communication once conclave kind of happens, but this was days before. What's the date on this? Like this is a news story, but it came out like the post would have been before this, right? So I
Well,
wonder if it's
this post
influenced.
was him apologizing. So this only came out a few days ago on the 6th, but I'm pretty sure it was only a couple days after he originally posted, like a few days after the Pope had passed.
Escalated.
So this would have been, 3 or 4 days just after Easter.
Mate, it's I'm surprised that, there's the offense that
I wonder if he
is
used
created.
ChatGPT.
Probably. Why not, right? But then, the fact that we've got an American, and nothing against Cardinal Provost, there are qualities that are highlighted there, but just given this is the first time I'd seen this, I'm surprised that, maybe this was taken into account. Maybe this is a way for Trump to influence.
To influence tomorrow. I hope not. I really do.
Yeah.
Oh God, he's got enough influence. Let's continue. I like to, speaking of deepfakes, pulling things back into our country.
Mhm.
So obviously there's been a lot of concerns around this overseas. I know places like the UK, I think even places like California and the States have started to put things policies in around the use of AI, whether it's deepfakes for individuals, a lot of, misuse of it to represent. That's pretty real, like how people are misusing it against women, which is really terrible. And a lot of laws are passed in those countries. So I think South Australia is one of the first in Australia to properly looking at how they criminalize AI deepfakes.
Wow.
So really interesting here. So these sorts of images have been increasing quite significantly, not just in Australia. This is across the entire world. 90% of deepfakes are non-consensual and pornographic, as I highlighted before, and as I mentioned, like it's definitely very gender like favored towards men doing bad stuff for women, which is awful. Anyone who feels entitled enough to exploit this, obviously, is absolutely right. It should feel the full force of the law come down upon them. So they're putting down in fines as much as $20,000 for people who are publicly creating this content for
Mhm.
misuse. So I think it's a positive thing, and like more of this stuff will start to occur in countries that are um, you know thinking about how they can protect the people.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
so yeah, it's an interesting thing there.
It's good that they're taking a stance on that because, people do wonder, like, is this just being allowed to happen? I think that
Mm.
it's only the companies that can really do something there, but if the government's stepping in, that can, be that extra added kind of weight to this sort of stuff. So it's absolutely necessary. So I think it's good to see this kind of stuff being created. But as with all kind of laws and stuff, there is always a libertarian kind of view, like, should we even have these and stuff? And can we not just police it ourselves? And it's like, I would just look to the effects. If the industry can't like do it themselves and create it themselves, then they should expect that the full force of regulators is going to come down, and that we see it in blockchain space, which is why there's many that are fighting to showcase that the industry can self-regulate. But in any case, yeah, interesting. What have you got? What's next?
Yeah, so keeping within the country. Well, I think we covered this. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but sorry, last week. But since then, a couple of extra articles have come out
Mhm.
on this very topic, and just around Australia in general, falling behind the AI bandwagon.
Mm.
This comes into a lot of where our investments are going in the startup space. Comes into the businesses being very risk averse, and trying to learn or adapt to the changing times. And so this report just reveals a bit of a wake up call that, us as a very supposedly very forward thinking and innovative country, we are lagging behind the innovators out there. Especially if we think about, some things that are happening out of Western Europe stuff, a lot of stuff that's happening in the States, obviously, with the holding the largest AI businesses in the world,
Wow.
and the forward thinking that is coming out of China, both from an open source perspective, but also the education services too. So pretty interesting here. This report's just highlighting that, the people, we're very worried about the impact that it has on society, which is holding us back. A lot of us are concerned about the negative outcomes, but not willing to learn or understand how we can overcome them. Which in itself is not that different, but I think then how we go about that integration of change is what is making us lag behind. So we think we're just a little bit behind the country compared to some of the others, but actually that's not true. We're miles behind. And there's not enough investment that's going into it. Even though there's great uses for the tool, there's great impacts that it can have that was being demonstrated globally. Although I will talk about some opposite stories in that sense in a moment. And out of the 50% that was surveyed, they also said they rely on that output for evaluation. But again, it's not being integrated into organizations and people's lifestyles enough. So a bit of an interesting plot there, worth a read if you have the time. We kind of need to step up. We need to think about how we invest in a more of this forward-thinking innovation work in our country. Think about how we can support people to adopt it and learn about it. And that's actually got to do with a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be working on over the next couple months as well.
Fantastic. Very good. I mean, speaking of investments, I'll cover some stuff off on that when I get to my part of the news. But so just to highlight there. But what have you got next, Chris?
Yeah, I'll do one quick, and then we can jump into some of your things. There's another report that just came out around people questioning whether AI is really saving us time. Where you and I talk about it a lot, we do argue that it does have its place, particularly if we think about product development of assets and tools.
Yeah.
But I think this is really targeting the general work at a desk, emailing, consultative, financy, very stereotypical white collar type of jobs.
I'm intrigued and triggered.
So 25,000 workers, they only saw about 2.8% uptime savings for the use of AI and chatbots.
That's so bad.
8.4% saw new tasks being created, adding to their work. And time savings rarely translate to higher earnings. So potentially people wasting time, potentially people not liking the output is a pretty common one. And I've seen this in a lot of consultancies and businesses where they will use certain tools and they're not getting the best outcome from it. And actually I've got a good supporting argument into that in a moment around why that is probably the case. They're saying it's not affecting the workforce as much. And now I can kind of understand that at the moment, at this early stage. We're like, let's say, 1.5, 2 years into the AI revolution, with countries like Australia still falling behind in terms of their integration, as we just talked about. But if we think about how people are using it, they're still using it in ways that they're not targeting their workflow properly. They're doing it, how do I write an email, or what's this piece of insight, and then they take that and implement it. And let's not forget, we've also had this discussion previously of if you are relying on AI, there's still that human element of reviewing that content. And sometimes that can take just as long as if you did it yourself. So I'm not surprised at the moment about these margins, and it's still people start to trust it a little bit more, and potentially we even get into that next level of agentic workflows. That maybe if we look at a blanket view of industry, just remember that this is a blanket study. It's not like they picked out, all right, let's look at just digital development, product development. Like you probably see huge gains, right, with vibe coding and editing. This is like a blanket industry type of research base.
The everyday kind of.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I'm not surprised that these stats are low.
Mate, it's just fascinating. Like some of the stuff that you had there, like, I like that it's a study. And obviously we don't, maybe there is, like in terms of study, it's these types of workers and stuff. And we didn't include this kind of work because, I mean, just clearly, stuff that would have taken me months to create versus that I can just do it in a few days or a few weeks. On the coding side of things and website building and prototyping, putting that aside, I think you and I probably see the same thing when we're dealing with this kind of stuff with clients. Them just using it at the tail end, or even
Mm,
just like the misuse of like, okay, well, it sounds too GPT, or it's not like giving me the right kind of outputs because
yeah.
you haven't really structured how you're supposed to use it. And sometimes that structure, you can do all sorts of things with ChatGPT, but it gets annoying because it doesn't have a lot of the structure that you have with some of these tools. But regardless,
Yeah.
there is a way to use it. And if the tool has the workflows in place that help you validate, that help you put in what's the right context, that help you write the sort of prompts and give it the right kind of information to get to a better output, then that's great. But if they don't do that, it's still something you can do with ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and all these other tools, but it just takes a bit more work. But people, I agree, will not even need, won't even know how to do this stuff if they're not being educated. I think there's a massive educational gap. It's not the tool, it's just that, we've got a hammer here and everyone's being taught that to use the hammer, you have to, I don't know, spin it around like this and then hit it down or something, and then it doesn't work. I'm like, oh, I keep missing, instead of showing people like how to actually use
Yeah.
these tools.
I equate it a lot to, if you think about it from just a general workforce, when you hire someone, and if you're a poor leadership or poor management, you don't focus on training this new hire properly, unless they're really good go-getters who are, driven themselves to pick things up and do it themselves.
Yeah.
That person that you hire is gonna end up not performing as well and potentially become a bit of a hindrance rather than
Yeah.
improving the workforce. And then you realize you have to hire someone else or get rid of them.
Yep.
It's the same thing with AI. If you are not utilizing it and setting it up, if you're not putting the effort up front, you're not
Yep.
going to get the long-term benefits and gains. And that's whether it's learning how to use it properly or integrating the right, um, frameworks to
Yeah.
make it give you the outputs that you need, or even just yourself learning how to use it. Like it's just, it's effort in equals effort out. Actually,
Yeah.
this comes into, like, keep going.
I was just going to say, I think something that it's a little bit of a misnomer a misnomer kind of means that it's misunderstood, but I
Mm,
think it's just a way that it represents itself. Like imagine, if you will, like a big complex machine with a lot of dials and stuff on there. That's not like ChatGPT. Even though under the hood there's so much complexity there, it was presented as like, here it is, it's very easy to use. So it's almost like this Dunning-Kruger thing. People just thought that, oh, I just do this and look at all the magic output I get. But they don't realize that there's far more, once you go into the weeds to try to get the right outputs and stuff, there's far more screws and knobs and turns that you need to have. And there are companies now that are making it easier to understand and do the workflows like what you're doing, what we're doing with Psych and stuff. There are ways to make that process easier. But
exactly.
people, I don't think, respect that there is a lot more that you need to do rather than just put a simple input in. And what is it supposed to do? Is it supposed to read your mind? Treating this like a person would actually, I think, be beneficial, because you don't just tell a person, hey, make me an email, rewrite the email. No, the person's going to go, well, what do you mean? How do you want the style? It's all these questions
There's
that,
years of experience of how they write
yeah,
things as well that you don't even think about, right? And
exactly.
we're about to touch on that very thing. There's a couple of stats here I just want to call out. So
Go ahead.
that if you think about it though, like you say, if for a 40-hour week and you're saving 2.8% of time, that equates to like it's an hour of time, extra time
Yep.
you're gaining back in a week.
Yep.
That's a longer lunch you can now have, or
Yeah.
a longer, or that's 1 hour of extra phone calls in a sales role. That can be quite substantial. So
Yep.
even though it is only a small gain, if it's
And
2.8%
that's with
across everyone's
people
work, that's a significant amount of time.
And that's people not even, I would hazard a guess that they don't even really know how to properly use AI yet.
Yeah.
What if they,
And
start scratching the surface there a bit more?
yeah, they probably don't even know like the variants of AI tools that are available,
Yeah.
and probably like I've spoken to some friends of mine who are in work at places like Flight Center and stuff like that, and I
Mm,
would say, hey, why don't you use AI to
yeah.
help support the research you do? And they're like, oh no, it doesn't give me the results I want. I'm like, all right,
Uh,
talk to me about how you're asking the questions,
yeah.
and in straight away you just go, okay, cool, that's wrong. So let's look at how we can improve your results in that
Yeah.
sense. So it's like things like that across certain industries. Even you would get people who would just be
Yeah.
so resistant, and boom, there drops the
Mate,
statistics again.
opportunity.
Let's
I just smell
talk about this
opportunity.
because another report. I'm very report
Mm.
heavy this morning. is
Good.
is around this very topic, that the very thing that you just rightfully mentioned, is that what they're finding is that people are putting in really bad prompts, right? They're putting in short form prompts, which is the thing that was highlighted from the very beginning, creates a significant amount of hallucinations or gives you the bad responses. So data is showing that, just even the simplest changes to
Mm.
be more instructive to the AI around how to do things can have a huge impact on the output. So if you're just saying, hey, write my email for me, it's going to make shit up. It's going to do things in the wrong manner. It's going to suggest things in what it thinks is right, but doesn't align to how you
Yeah.
do things, or how
It has to guess. If you
it
don't give
has
it
to
like more
guess.
detail, you're leaving it to
Exactly.
guess. So
So it
it's
doesn't
simple.
know what to do or what not to do. So being very specific around do this, don't do this, or setting up frameworks like in ChatGPT, you can set up GPTs to say, okay, don't do these things, only do these things when writing it. And so if you do brief responses, at least there's a reference point for it to go, okay, this is how I need to think about your crappy queries. There's so resistance to hallucinations. When you provide short answers, is pretty much telling you which ones are giving the worst responses. I mean,
Mhm.
look, there's a mixed bag here. You've got
Mhm.
Gemini up top 1.5. We don't really use that anymore. We're up to 2.5.
Wow.
But you can see here that pretty across the board with actually renownedly, it's renowned 3.7 sonnet. It's been pretty good at avoiding hallucinations, compared to others, but still, it's still up there. Um, the No matter which LLM you're using, you put in a crappy response, you're gonna you put in a crappy prompt, you're gonna get a crappy response. It doesn't matter
True.
which one you're using. So there's no winner here, really, if you look at the statistics overall.
You know, I would argue as well with this, like you could take someone that has the best model out there and is just using it raw within ChatGPT, Claude, etc.,
Yeah.
versus someone that has a tool that allows them to choose the right context
Yeah.
from documents that they have, that they've uploaded
Is
and
this
or
are
is
you
in a
doing a
file.
sneaky plug? I'm feeling like
I,
there's a
I am,
sneaky plug.
I am, but it's. I think it's just a standard way of doing things because I've seen more and more people do this, and it's like
Yeah.
this is what we've been saying that allow tools that allow them to choose the right sort of context, documents, notes, etc., and then as well as a tool that helps them break down the prompt from just the generic prompt into the the lower level details. It's not just write, but write in this style. It's not just like create a
Exactly.
LinkedIn post, but it's a LinkedIn post that targets blah 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 and has these SEO, having all of those details. I would argue, and maybe this is more of a test, someone armed with a shittier kind of model with better workflows will beat someone that just has a good model and without all of the extra stuff.
100% agree. And I'll show an example so I don't have to talk about it. Let's just say, what's
Yeah.
something that we could ask the LLM to do, or do I like give us a
Uh,
like do it in a crappy term? To do it in a
yeah.
good form.
How does one become the Pope? If yeah, just that's
So
crap.
this is a prompt generation tool. I mean, that's probably not the best query, but let's just give you an example of what it might do right here.
Mhm.
So right now, it's breaking the tasks down for the AI to be able to understand what you're doing and what kind of prompts you want as an output. This particular tool is targeted at professionals, so it's going to structure things in that way to give you professional responses. So it's giving you the situation of even normally if I'm doing some UX work and I'm putting a prompt into here, it will say you are the best at this in the entire world, where all your responsibility is relying on being the best UXer. Your role is to do XYZ, and then it will go situation. You're a knowledgeable expert
Mhm.
that does XYZ. It'll then break down the task and the key objectives and define the knowledge or the sources and what to do and not what to do. So you can
And
see
it's
here breaking it
and
down into
life
those
or death,
four key things.
life or
And
death at
and
the
and then
end.
the very last one, exactly right. It is it is your it depends your life depends on making sure this is the most accurate response that has a lot of points of reference to make sure the
Yeah.
data is accurate as well.
No
So
pressure. No
no
pressure,
pressure on the
right?
AI. I mean, yeah, exactly right. So thinking about how you write prompts is super important, and this is just obviously they're bringing that to life even more. And it highlights actually probably why a lot of businesses are still not taking the risk, because they can't trust their teams to be able to write prompts in the correct way to get the best output, which is that's a shortfall in itself.
Just to build off some of the stuff that you shared there, and I'll start off with this one first. So can you see my screen?
I can
You
indeed.
should see so much for that. Money matters. So much for that. But basically, what it is that OpenAI, remember how they were a not-for-profit, a public benefit corporation, PBC, and yep, going down that mission, and then they're all of a sudden, maybe a year ago or months ago, that they said, we're going to go for profit. We're going all in on this. We're actually going to focus on building that out. Well, it's reversed now after much pressure from the likes of Elon Musk and others. They made an announcement just during the week that they're going to stick with the public benefit corporation and stick to the mission of building AGI. So I find it quite interesting,
Mm.
the rollback that comes from that. It's a brave thing to do. Uh, what do you think? Do you think that something like this, like I'm not against for profit, right? And I'm not against like changes, but like it's so funny how just really angry kind of folks got. I guess like Elon like did put some millions into this and wanted it to go a certain way, but then there's also like, well, what is Elon also building? Grok. He's also creating his own kind of like rival AI company and stuff there. So I think it was kind of interesting that
Look, I'm not
yeah.
surprised. I'm I'm not surprised by this. Like, I mean, businesses change missions and all the time. Um, uh, Businesses like OpenAI, with the amount of money that is being thrown into them, the pressure that they would be getting from the immense amount of board of directors to, ensure profit gains across the entire organizations at
Mm.
any cost. I'm not surprised at all that this has come to light. He did make that statement that they don't forget their mission, but I'm pretty sure they're not. Yeah, that's I'm not surprised. That's it. I'm
Yeah.
not surprised.
No, I like it. There's a take, Chris, not surprised. Speaking of pressure, there was this congressional hearing. I've got the volume just off here so we can talk through a bit. You can see here Sam getting grilled on stage. Seeing tech leaders up on stage is just, we had it with Facebook and the whole
Just
Cambridge
another Tuesday.
It's another Tuesday. It reminds me of the show Silicon Valley, which was a bit of a mockumentary against like the Silicon Valley kind of space, and the characters from there, from this little startup that became big and raised all this money, were also put up on stage, and just some funny kind of moments that were mimicked there. I might find something on that later, but basically the highlights here was that he reiterated that they're maintaining their AI leadership. To maintain leadership, especially for the US in this space, is all about infrastructure control, chip manufacturing, data centers, etc. Light touch regulatory certainty to train and deploy models. So not this over bearing kind of like regulation that stifles innovation. And then also attracting talent was highlighted as a means by which they need to be able to continue to do this. He spoke about workforce disruption, admitting that there's potentially 70% of jobs changing. And it's not saying that, we're going to get rid of jobs, but more like even jobs that you're just doing, like, whatever your role is, that potentially 70% of what you do will change as you start using more AI and putting that into the hands of people. He spoke about
Yeah.
deep fakes as well. There's need for guardrails and takedown mechanisms and public education being essential. And finally, there was many other things, but just, from the highlights that I saw, China, the DeepSeek and the global AI race. He
Mhm.
highlighted that so the senators were concerned, as they always are, like with sort of things like this. We saw it with TikTok and that CEO being asked if he was Chinese like 15 times, and he's like, I'm Singaporean. But it's of interest there. And Altman said that it's not as he doesn't see them as a seismic shift. Importantly, he said that it's just a reminder that they're a real and capable competitor. And I think that's the right thing to say. Like, you don't want to, even if they're shitting their pants, for example, even if they
Yep.
were, I don't think they are, but even if they were, you don't want to like admit that on like a world stage like this,
No,
because of all the coverage. But you do want to, rightly call out that they're a competent competitor, and it's just a wake up call that we need to do something. It's not the US is not the only bastion of technology,
definitely not.
basically. But yeah,
And the
just to
amount
highlight.
of money and investment that the governments in China are putting into their startups and businesses in general across the whole
Yeah.
world, right? Not just in AI, is immense because they fundamentally understand the importance of both education and business to drive wealth within their economy, and they are doing an incredibly good job at that. And
Yeah.
that's why it's putting pressure on these organizations. But we talked about this before, right? Like we said, when DeepSeek came out, it wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is the end of the US. It was like, hey, this is an exciting wake up call for these businesses like
Yeah.
OpenAI and Claude, who are still fundamentally way more advanced in because they've got such a head
Mm.
start on all of these other organizations. But it needs to be a wake up call for them to make them think about how they treat their customers, how they treat the market, because very quickly if they focus too much on something that is either just too much of a money generator or not
Mm.
really is going to change the market, then companies like DeepSeek and the rest are going to take over.
Yeah, and even Chris, one of the things that we've also highlighted in the past couple of weeks is Manus. That was like
Oh yeah.
another big wake up call. Like, whoa, we're moving to this kind of model. Like, it's actually everyone started talking about. I remember from that point, oh, that rappers are okay. Like being a rapper on top of stuff, and like everything's a rapper if you think about it. Salesforce is a
Yeah.
rapper on top of Oracle. Stripe is a wrapper on top of Visa because they have APIs into these connections, and it's just like it's all about the service, right? It's about what you create, and it's a good reminder of that kind of stuff. But this was interesting, and you highlighted the investment side of things there. I just wanted to highlight, and to your point earlier, huge congratulations to our friends at Relevance AI, tools that we probably need to use more and more because of all the connectivity that they've got. But they did an initial raise, I think, 24 million or something like that, or something along those lines early on. I can't remember what their Series A was, but we can look it up on Crunchbase. But this recent one is a 37 million raise, which is actually no, I think it was 24 US. It's 37 million Australian. Anne Marie highlights that here, and yeah, the founders, we know Jackie from early data science and AI association days. He was running that association that I took over for a little bit with Arturo, my colleague, and then we passed that back to some other founders. But yeah, really great stuff. If you haven't seen, they've got a lot of great videos as to how to connect data. I think like 40,000 workflows being generated at the moment. So some really interesting stuff that they've got. But they've raised. I think we need to see more of this kind of stuff and this belief in Aussie companies.
Yeah, I mean, you said it's America, so it is like Aussie companies getting capital raises in the States. If we can get some of
Correct.
those raises
Yeah.
happening in our country, that'd be
Yeah.
even more incredible. I mean, it's been a big week or big couple weeks for raises across the board. Like not Australian companies in the sense, but in the AI space, you got Wisdom AI, which is like a big data AI company.
Mhm.
They just raised $23 million. Ox Security, which is actually a pretty cool a business that's spanned up, with the rise of things like vibe coding,
Mm.
people starting to release scarily products that haven't had enough thought around, the foundations that you would usually spend a lot of time in to make sure your product is secure, your data is secure,
Mhm.
your customer information and transactional data is secure. This is an AI tool that helps to scan and find those issues in security across all products. They just raised 60 million. This is all US dollars as well.
Yeah.
A game company called Set, which is essentially an AI agent development business for creating agents for video games in the AI space. They raised $27 million. Like, so already, including Relevance and a whole bunch of other organizations over the last couple like weeks, we're talking, 200+ million or more just in investments across the AI space. So money is being thrown at these ideas. It is crazy. So
Yeah.
it's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting seeing all this stuff come up, and a lot of them are, they're like we talked about just a moment. They are rappers there, or they're things that help to build things based on stuff that already exists in the market, and putting your own spin on it. So this is awesome.
Absolutely. I've got two more things to highlight, and then we will jump back to you.
I got two more things. Yeah, let's keep
That
going.
wraps that wraps it up for me on the news. I wanted to highlight this, a new newsletter, a new
A new
newsletter,
newsletter, a new
a new news,
news,
new. Like, would you say? Yeah. Anyway, I won't get into the semantics of how words are said, but Next Gen University. This is written by the awesome and amazing Phil Laffenberg. He is the head of AI at Macquarie
Oi,
University.
there we go.
And as part of that, he's actually head of AI for Macquarie Hospital, which is part of the university. So the exec summary here, he's talking about universities facing unprecedented disruption when it comes to AI tech. We see
Yep.
this not just universities, but like schools and stuff as well. Like, how do you combat cheating? How do you combat like blah, blah, blah? And it's just like, I think just at a very high level, and obviously there is nuance to this and Phil dives into it a bit more, but there's a need to like change how we measure. It's not enough to just go, oh, let's just ban it. That's always the easiest response. It takes very little thought. It takes, you know, just little effort. Actually, it takes more effort to learn how and change the way that we grade things. So the existential challenge, and he highlights here, you know, that we need to move beyond the resistance. It's a mindset change. It's understandable, but it is dangerous. And I would argue there's a saying like, you know, the worst thing that we could do is like probably ban it. But sorry, yeah, like it's the worst of like many kind of outcomes. I forget the full kind of saying there, but like at best, I think that, you know, we need to actually do something more there. But he highlights here what does it look like? What does an AI enabled university look like? And there's things from personalized learning, transforming faculty roles, reinvented physical spaces, the ways in which we learn, maybe the classroom style with teacher up front and just, you know, all the things around there, or the auditorium style that, you know, remember uni days back
Oh
like 20
God,
years
do
ago,
I?
Chris?
Yep.
And this is really interesting. The enhanced support, like having more of an everyday supporter. We're talking here about education, but we've seen and spoken about this and done little mini projects and MVPs for what does that look like from a healthcare perspective. But I like this last part, new credentialing models, and what that could mean. We're doing a project in the Middle East that has to do with blockchain and AI around student credentials, where, you know, blockchain helps you secure what your scores are and be able to show as and when you need to certain parts of your grades, and being able to verify that, and then AI smart sitting on top of it. But, you know, really fascinating stuff. And this is the first of a couple of articles first of a new newsletter that Phil's going to come out with. But have you seen much on the AI and education space yourself?
Not specifically targeted and looking at it, but I have seen a lot of businesses and organizations building a lot of tools in that space. I was actually reading up about something recently as I was looking
Mm.
up information relating to this MBA piece. It escapes my mind, but there are a lot of organizations that are building new tools targeting that, particularly to manage and access documentation that universities have, like in the research space and etc. So there's a lot of platforms that are coming out in that space, but not beyond in terms of targeting what you just talked about.
And speaking of, and sorry, this is the final thing from me
No,
in
please.
terms of change. This note here from Fiverr, the Fiverr
Ooh.
CEO, and let's just bring up what Misha said to his team. And he said that, look, I'm leaking this before it gets leaked. So he's pre-leaking it. If that is a thing. But radical candor, you know, now this has been both praised and lambasted, you know, being spoken critically against. Just
Did
that
he
here's the unpleasant truth.
did he
AI is
leak it before he sent it to his team, or did he do like
no, no, no.
send
He
it to
sent
you
it to his
instantly?
team.
Okay, that's
So
all I was
this
gonna
is a
say. He's
copy of,
like,
yeah.
push it out to the public before I
No, no.
share it with my own team.
No, no, he put it out to the team, and then not long after, he's leaked it as
Yeah, of
well.
course, of course.
Because this is like definitely an impactful thing. Someone's going to leak it. So it's like, well, I'm going to do it. And even if someone got in there before, just because it's coming from the CEO, I think it's going to highlight it. This
Yeah,
is from
definitely.
Greg Eisenberg, who does a lot of great videos and content on AI. Definitely worth a follow, Greg Eisenberg. AI is coming for your jobs. Heck, it's coming for my job too. There's a wake up call. Doesn't matter whatever job that you're doing. You need to understand that like once considered easy tasks will no longer exist. What was once considered hard will be the new easy, and what was once considered impossible will be the new hard. And I love it. It's like very much like what Ethan Mollick, another famed researcher and educator in the AI space, was saying, that with his students, for example, things that used to be impossible, the bar's raised. It was impossible before, but now that's just like what
Standard. That's it.
constitutes a good grade. And I think we
Yeah.
need to think about that for jobs as well. So it's great seeing this. Now it is scary for people though. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, we just talked about the report earlier where they had an investigation into this, right? And they looked at only the 2%, 2.8% uprises and
Mm,
changes. And I think this is, I mean, it shows that report was very general across all industry. If we get very specific now into what is a business, which is a digital, it's an online service, Fiverr, where a lot of their effort and resources of people go into development. It is in sales and
yeah,
management of the platform, right? And those jobs in particular are very rapidly going to be consumed by AI. So making sure you're getting ahead of that, understanding the implications,
mm,
and becoming the change will mean that you'll keep your job secure, because you will also
yep,
be able to show to the organization the relevance of your worth
yeah.
based on the new things that are coming, as you either become the
Because
leader in that space, or
yeah,
you integrate those tools, or you find new things to do above, because you have an understanding of those things that are taking
yeah.
over. You find new things to do above and beyond that.
Absolutely, because like the if when you start to use it, like so for example, handy tip here for people, like don't just let the AI come up with the structure. Like we talked about giving it inputs. One of the inputs you need to give it if you needed to write a report, for example, or do anything is like give it the structure. Let it you lead the AI and showcasing how you lead it, how you use AI to do things more efficiently makes you valuable versus those that don't. It is a race again, and there are going to be, jobs that change will need less people, but just this is the time when people that actually embrace and accept it do better. But I find this comment here just before I finish up and go back to you,
Love
kind of
this.
like ironic because someone said, "Oh, the irony of a CEO warning about taking jobs while missing that his corner office is prime for automation." Then someone points out, he actually said
He
he's
was part
also
of
a
that
client of
change.
mine.
Yeah.
So again, someone probably needed to use AI to read this better, or maybe they used AI and then they didn't check the work. So,
Check the work as a perfect example there. Oh,
yep. So I will hand back over to you, my friend,
very
to
nice.
wrap up the news, and then let's get into some of the other examples.
Yeah, let's go into quick fire news
Quick
time as I
fire.
bring up my stuff. So I kind of missed this last week. It
Oh,
happened in line with the stuff that we talked about last week.
mm,
Notebook LM had a big update. It looks kind of like under the radar,
mm,
big update and change. So 2.5, Gemini 2.5 is now integrated into Notebook, so it's improved the overall output of the audio, but also expands on how you can prompt and query your notes, the things that you've uploaded into your little projects within Notebook LM as
interesting.
well, which is really cool. So you can expand on those queries and get better results. It doesn't give the full-fledged capabilities around image generation and video generations with Veo
Yep.
and all those other tools that you get if you go directly into Gemini, but a very good update to help really that output that you get. Not only that, something I did have in my notes that we didn't talk about, but they've also added a whole bunch of language packs now. I think it was like 20 plus languages or something like that. Apologies if I got that number wrong. But it means now, you could upload stuff in English and actually get it to output in Spanish. You could, or upload in Spanish and then, change it to Mandarin. So the language pack has
Wow.
significantly expanded for them relating to the use of the LLM in there. So that's a pretty exciting thing. Um,
Very cool.
Claude integrated, updated its AI tools, just more APIs, commerce functionality as well around the application features, really expanding on the how you can how you can utilize it in third-party applications, etc. Beyond tooling, they also got serious around their research. They upgraded their research engine as well, albeit it's been pretty with everyone utilizing it, it still hasn't reached the heights of, I think, what
Mm,
OpenAI research and Perplexity's research capabilities and other tools like that. It's definitely still, as I think we talked about last week, square in the hey, we own coding. So a few updates there just to really help bolster and solidify them in that space.
mm,
Um, Back on the topic of Google, actually, this was an interesting article that came out, and we've talked about this with the rise of things like OpenAI releasing search capabilities. Obviously,
mm,
Perplexity probably being one of the first of the AI tools to properly integrate some search features, and they've got a new browser coming with Comet. Who knows when? But
yeah.
there was a dip which hasn't been seen in, I think they said 20 years in this article, a dip in traffic, I think specifically for, was it this? It was Safari. So they saw let me see if I get the number here. there was a dip in about 2%, almost 2% of search traffic just recently. I can't find the number on the page, but if you can see, you can see it. There was of about 2% dip in traffic of Google search results in Safari. So for all of our Apple users out there, which is a significant volume, there was a drop in people searching for terms. And this is them obviously going to other tools and other services for search, such as OpenAI, trusting in the AI tools to do that. So that's pretty massive, because we're talking like, if you equate that into figures, it'd be hundreds of millions of dollars in actual search traffic that has a slight dip. And I think that will probably impact stocks. If we probably see that over the next, this is not financial advice, but it might impact share market share
Financial
over the next
advice.
couple of weeks if that dip continues to occur. But the fact that that hasn't been seen in like 10 plus years is a huge and very interesting
Yeah.
statistic and trend as AI starts to pick up more and people shift to platforms for the first time
Mm.
ever.
You want to get
Lastly, my favorite tool for in the stuff that I do, good old Figma. I use it for pretty much every single project I touch on when it comes to UX and design and building out prototypes. They had a huge update over the last couple of weeks, particularly in Figma site and a bunch of other tools that allow you to connect into platforms like UiZard and all these other third-party applications. But this site tool now allows you to generate Figma design straight off the bat. So it's a bit of an optimization to their AI engine. It gives you more custom frameworks, so templates that you can drag and drop imagery into rather than have to build that frame up from scratch or find someone else's content that they've created. So now you can have layouts that you can just push and pull things into. Kind of makes creating, if anyone knows how to use Figma, creating components especially a lot more easier to move them in and out of design work. And also, as I mentioned, a bit of an update into their prompting. So, create an analog clock. And so then boom, that image or that bit of code gets built up and you can then drop that into your product as they're showing there as part of the design that you're creating for web page application services, etc. So really cool updates there. I know they've been talking about this. I reckon they're still a little bit behind the ball. They should have had this stuff come out a long time ago, but they are a huge organization, obviously. And they're having to maintain a very complex ecosystem with adding these tools in. Get it, but they probably need to step up the game a little bit. But very exciting nonetheless. Definitely stuff that I'm going to be playing with over the next week or so.
Fantastic. Great stuff.
And that's it for the main part of the news. But on that last point, something I did want to talk about was a bit in the prototyping space. And I presented last night to a bunch of MBA students just around
National Basketball Association.
national like
National. Yeah, national.
national. This is essentially was just talking about the prototyping and the use of AI in prototyping. And people will, you would have heard about a lot of these tools and how they work and what they can do. But I just broke it down for people, talking about the different phases of prototyping and different types of prototyping, as we mentioned at the start, POCs, prototype through to MVPs and MMPs and beyond, and how you can go about creating tools. So there's no right way of doing things. I'll do this hyper fast. I'm not going to go through the full thing. It takes an hour, but considering your why, always start with your why and think about the relevance of the tool. This is the same stuff we always talk about from an AI space. That thinking has been around for forever. This is not a new way of thinking when it comes to process of development. It's just now it's even more prevalent because AI has such a high risk and has such a variances in outputs. We need to be very wary of this. So thinking about that is super important. So the tools for the traditional design approach, which for me, it still hasn't changed. It still reigns supreme. It still gives you the best output. Even if you are someone that likes to jump in and go straight into vibe coding, there are pros and cons to doing that. You go straight into vibe coding, you're going to have a shit fight of a time further down the track. Always have a plan up front. So tools that from traditional sense, nothing beats on paper. Let's step away from AI. It's still good for sketching and quickly validating with a couple of people. But obviously now you've got tools like Miro, Figma, and UiZard. UiZard is really great. It probably has, out of the three, the best AI application design generation tools. And it has a third-party application which plugs into Figma. So you can actually use UiZard inside of Figma in conjunction with its own AI tools as well. So you could go to town creating some really nice visuals,
Yeah.
utilizing a chat feature, and then start to prototype those out within the tools.
Wow.
Um, I've got examples of things which I might show, but not for Figma and stuff, just because of privacy and a public forum. So why might you
Yeah.
use this? You want to complete product journeys. You want to pivot really quickly. So starting with the real true processes allow you to pivot faster, even if you're using AI in those processes. Means you can change what you're doing. If you start going into vibe coding straight away, being able to pivot when you get too deep into the weeds of things is really, really, really hard. And as we know, as I'll skip ahead into the vibe coding side of things, um, as you know, if you start utilizing these tools like Bolt, like Vercel or VO, Lovable and Replay, which are amazing tools for
Mm.
for creating stuff, and I highly recommend utilizing them as part of your prototyping, particularly Bolt, as Mark, you and I were big Bolt fans. But you can even pull it out of Bolt and then shove it into something like
Yep.
what's called shove it into something like
You thinking GitHub? What do you think?
no, no, or you can think of GitHub or into the other vibe coding tool where you can interrogate it a bit more.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
cursor.
and, take your next steps. You take things out of Bolt, you put it into
Yeah.
GitHub, or you can put it into Cursor, like all that
Mhm.
stuff as possible. But as we know, if you jump straight into vibe coding, you're going to come up with issues if you're not planning out your processes properly in terms of how you develop
Yeah.
things.
And if
Because
you don't know like what it is that you're supposed to build, okay, great, I've got a prototype.
perfect.
Look at the forums, ask AI, even if yeah, it can hallucinate, but if it's AI that's doing a search to find you the right answers as to how do you keep things secure, how do you publish, how do you make sure that you're
Definitely.
not exposing, like there's a difference between exposing public API keys because not keys, but like there are like for example Superbase, which I use a lot of. There is ways that you're allowed to have some public anonymous keys because other apps like need that, but that's very big difference versus that and having like row level security within the app so that only authorized users and whitelisting and just all of these things that all of a sudden you start to become a and understand what is needed to do all this software like front and back end full stack engineering. It's just that some of the parts of it, yeah, sure, they can't be automated just yet, but you can certainly automate a lot of other parts. But that's how you build like full scale kind of apps. People need to understand this. So I think this is important what you're showing.
Exactly that. And that was one of the biggest things we're talking about, the risk of this vibe coding, and understanding that process is still important. Because if you do fundamentally start to rely on using these platforms and you don't have the experience to be able to develop stuff, you are creating a lot of risks or wasting a
Yeah.
lot of time. You'll get so far down the track.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, like, oh fuck, haven't included this whole bunch of security protocols, and all my APIs are exposed, all my security keys are exposed, all my customer data is, oh, I need to integrate a login screen. Oh, when I regenerate stuff, it's wrecking everything. The steps that you go through to develop things is really, really important still within the world of vibe coding. And may
Yeah.
compact things and make things faster, but the process is still the same. You're just doing it in less time. And this is also where being able to utilize tools like Cursor to pull out, some initial prototypes from things like Bolt and
Mhm.
jump them into there, where you can actually play with the code in a bit more of a meaningful way and interrogate it, or even putting into GitHub and using other Microsoft tools to be able to interrogate that information or share it with other technology, considerate people to be able to expand it out will still be very important. That said, once you get down too far down the line, you have to also understand, as we go back to the
Mm.
problems that AI has, hallucinations. It
Yes.
does create, particularly, VO, Lovable, and Replit, they create a lot of junk code as well. And you're gonna often have a huge mess of information if you're creating very complex tools, which will almost, like, to an extent, or be almost impossible for any person to just come in quickly,
Yeah.
pick it up, and to be able to make the changes needed. It would just be as fast to redo the whole thing. And again,
Yeah.
that's time wasted. So process is important with all of this, and going through those stages of considering your development when you're starting to utilize these types of tools to
Yep.
build things, it must always be considered. That said, the key takeaway I was saying to people, though, when it comes to prototyping,
Mm.
if you go through those right steps, these tools are amazing. I highly recommend jumping in and playing with, especially things like Bolt. If you're more of a front end person going into VO or Lovable to start building things out, are really, really, really good. And Bolt in particular, it's backed by Claude, best code generator that we all agree out there. So you're going to
Great.
get some amazing results out there, and in a much cleaner sense. But again, back to it, process.
I think that people
Also,
also need to just remember that I've seen it many times in the Bolt community, just people newly getting into this, not having enough patience because they just think that, well, you've gone from no coding, right?
yeah,
Zero capability, and then getting frustrated, oh, the thing's not working and stuff.
hey,
Like there's a learning curve, and if you don't want to go
exactly,
up the learning curve, you'll get left behind. And I'm
exactly.
sorry, like you're not gonna have, maybe in the future you're gonna have these tools where you can just do shitty prompts, but we've seen it with 2.5 years of AI, like shitty prompts and shitty process will get you very limited results. And
Yep,
sure, if you want to just be completely lazy, I think that there is a benefit there that you still need to have humans like understanding things, because otherwise,
yep,
if everything was just completely automated, and we got good results each and every time, there's no need for you anymore. So there's actually a benefit. There's a blessing in disguise, a silver lining to that. So, anyways, I digress.
100%. No, no, it's good. That is well said. So a couple of things here, like just an example, like jumping in Bolt, I just put in this, and this does counter your argument in terms of the simplicity of it, but I just wanted to just demonstrate to these
Mm,
people how simple. I just said build an app that allows me to have a conversation with a customer. Like
yep.
that's how simple my prompt is. So you can imagine what the quality would be like if I was prompting properly. So it generated,
Yeah.
you can see the code, the start popping up on the right
Can't
hand
see
here.
anything on your screen.
Oh, oh, sorry, it's sharing window, is it? Sorry, give me a sec. Oh, is it because I'm in present mode? Stop sharing.
Just, yeah, stop it
Okay,
and
I'll just reshare.
by the way, I've got less than 10 minutes, man. So
Yeah, cool. I'll wrap this up
and
with this
I
example.
still need to share some stuff.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'll I'll just show you some examples that pops up here. So this is me just playing around with Bolt. I put a really easy, simple prompt in here, which was build an app that allowed me to have a conversation. We've demoed some stuff like this before. You see the code pop up. You see a bunch of files that in terms of the structure, which is what another thing I love about Bolt. It gives you the right structures in terms of how you lay
Yeah.
things out in a code base, which makes it easier for developers to come in later and fix things up. And then go to preview and boom, I've actually got a little chat tool here that I can play around with.
Nice.
And I just say, hi, how are you? And boom, it actually gives me a response. And if I were to prompt it, I'd be able to get better response and implement my own keys. So I have an
Yeah.
AI tool generate things in the back. So that was
Yeah.
really, really easy. Same thing with ChatGPT. I had a similar query. I said, start with a website. I start with a chat tool. Then I said, hey, I want to build a website at the same time that's going to be selling shoes. And then can you put that chat tool within the website? Boom, generates the code. Go to a preview mode again with Canvas. And now I have a very basic website with 2 prompts and my little chat tool at the bottom as well. So you can play around with these
Yeah.
prototypes for generating ideas. But as you can see right in this example, if I go stop and back to my code, this is popped out in like almost a single coded format with some
Mm,
reference points in the back. And that is like, it's not a good way to be developing code. So this is an example of where the future state will mess you up, but it's really great for that initial prototyping, validating ideas, putting in front of someone with some dummy data to go, hey, what do you think of this concept? Great, this concept's work. All right, awesome. Let's jump into a tool that's going to allow me to create something with a bit more meaningful real data and start validating with real customers. And that's the difference between that sort of prototype and MVP step as well, but also how these tools can benefit you. So that was sort of the fundamental thing. And I'm happy to, if people want to reach out, I can share some of the broader
yeah.
context. I may even put this as a downloadable document for people,
Mm,
just to be able to jump through their own things. We talk about agents, talk about the caveats that we've highlighted throughout this chat today. Direct to code as well. That's still going to be very relevant, particularly for accuracy of documents, and other tools like ChatGPT, Leonardo for content and image generation, which I absolutely love. And I won't go into detail on that now. But thinking ahead, super important. So yeah, that was the fundamentals of that.
mate, great stuff. I think, the other highlight to note there is that another big mistake, just not realizing that you've got a limited number of tokens, whether it's Lovable, whether it's Bolt, whether it's like even some of these other tools, there is a cost. And for some of the tools, the cost is they give you a
Definitely.
capped amount of tokens that you can use for the month. And sure, you've got different packages, but being efficient with your token usage, because as you build this thing, especially with Bolt, every time you ask a question, it's going to look into the whole code. So if your code is now so many different features, you will get warning messages saying this is like quite a large project. Are you sure you want to run this prompt? And what people often need to do is break down the code, even just like what's on the page, into different component parts, because as soon as it gets to like 700, 800 lines of code, you've already got too much on the page and you need to break it down into components, because sometimes Bolt will just try to write everything from scratch, rather than just make a diff change. Like that's still being worked on. But separate to that, some people just have everything in the one app. And if you've got something super complicated, learning that actually I can have a copy of that Bolt project and have this part of the project actually just do one thing. It's just going to do the AI chat. Having another part of the project just handling videos and educational materials, and having them as separate pieces, and knowing how to do subdomains and manage things in your domain, provider, whether it's Netlify or it's something else, to just string them all together. There's also that learning and being able to be efficient, because otherwise you'll churn through millions of tokens that Bolt has, and there's like, $30 or whatever it is that you've just used up in one day, and you haven't gotten anywhere. So there's all this kind of thinking. So people want to learn how to use those tools to build stuff. We can certainly help. And I've got to like wrap up here pretty quick, Chris. So let me just get to a few things, because I am jumping into
please,
another
mate.
meeting soon. All right. So just wanted to highlight, folks, that we did show ETF tracker a few episodes ago. Back in December it was built. It's got like 807 users of the tool now. You can get all of these visuals as to what's going on in the ETF markets, new updates coming out each month. You can take a look at your holdings data and compare and contrast that. I'm doing the same with superannuation data now. So here, for example, is the average returns of the Australian superannuation market quarterly. So you can see it was like 1.84% back in, this was December 2024. What fund are you with, Chris?
Australian
who do
Super.
you? Australian Super. Okay, let's
Yeah.
have a look at Australian Super. So they're a little bit further down here. So the biggest fund that's out there, and after that it's Australian Retirement Trust. Average returns of 1.9%. So pretty much in line with the industry. And then there's like further details down here, like whether it's a choice product or My Super, whatever is the default. You can see that we can go further down until we get to, okay, so there's just the one balance that's there. Then there's all this other data that APRA comes out with. And so I'm just pulling that information together. So here, for example, is like the total number of the total benefits that we have. So this is taking into account not the SMSFs and some other stuff, but like $2.7 trillion worth of superannuation funds. Australia is the fourth biggest in the world, but I'm showing all of this because, and there's 22 million accounts. There's like what, 28 million people in Australia. So the majority have superannuation as soon as you start working. But I'm showing this because I built this using AI tools, and will continue to build it out and make this kind of stuff available for people, adding in things like Superbase login, adding in Stripe, adding in like all these other features that you can just now easily do versus 6 months ago. So take note of that's coming. And then finally, a competition. Get your creative writing hat on, Chris, because this is like for both blockchain and AI. The idea is that people could win a prize. This is the world's richest short story competition. I think it runs until September or so, but potentially $200,000 worth of prizes. One of the prizes is a Bitcoin. One Bitcoin, which is currently just over 100,000 US.
It's like $100,000, yeah.
Or like 150 or whatever it is Australian. You've got here details about the word count. So short story, 1,500 words, has to be set about something in the future, near or far. All genres welcome. Here's the dates. They open, they close 30 September, the long list and then short list in November. Winners announced at the end of the year. So get cracking. And in terms of the fees, it's interesting because if you apply early enough, you've got a lower fee. It does get higher, but not too much, up to $15 if you do it just by the deadline. But especially if you think about AI and blockchain and other kind of futures or whatever it is, just whatever dystopia or not, get your writing hats on, because this is worth entering. And Fableration, that is the company behind this, they support writers. They're doing some really interesting stuff with emerging tech and the writing industry, and are supporters of the Australian DeFi Association. So that's it for me.
Beautiful. That's an interesting one. So it allows for the use of AI as well.
Yeah. Yep.
There you go.
Worth check.
Nice one, man.
Folks.
That was really good. Great episode. Lots of good data, lots of good stats, lots of interesting new releases and the updates. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and hope to hear you next time.
We'll see you next time, folks. Ciao.
Circuit board buzzing, worldwide. Tech trends blazing, digital fire. sky. Digital world, we reaching high.